Speaking of my dad, want to hear a secret? Now, I'm not supposed to tell anyone this, Charlie, but you are my best friend, and loyalty is the most important word in the dictionary, so I'll tell you. My dad is in the CIA, and he orchestrated the overthrowing of the dictator of the Congo, some loser steroid head Bob Smith, and he turned the country into a democracy like America. It's a miracle! It's a true Christmas miracle!
Wow, my whites do look whiter. Wow, my whites do look whiter. Wow, my whites do look whiter. You all know that quote. It's no, do you feel lucky, punk? This is my boomstick. Frankly, Scarlet. Who gives a hoo ha? Any of those things. Those are quotes from uh, the movie, I guess, that we watched in celebration of Christmas. Happy holidays. This is our Christmas special. We're surrounded by all our friends as usual on here, but we thought there was no better way than to spend the holiday season with you, sharing a movie with you. And we went through some additional preparation as well. We're going to be discussing a wrestling Christmas miracle, Ken Del Vecchio production. So buckle up. But Mike, explain yourself.
Just in general or tonight?
Whichever you prefer.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm wearing an Ultimate Warrior mask because we are going to be talking about wrestling. I'm not a huge wrestling fan, but for some reason, when I was a kid, Ultimate Warrior really spoke to me. I assume because as a child, I spoke fluent cocaine.
Yeah, it's a crash the plane, and we go through hours of preparation, pre-work, and everything to get ready. Mike handcrafted that mask as part of the preparation, and then I had the bright idea to share, since this is a wrestling movie. More apropos for this wrestling movie, my championship belt buckle that I received for the Goshen, Indiana wrestling tournament, first place, and 177-pound weight class. And we didn't give medals out to the winners. We gave them belt buckles, and I thought I would wear it for the show, but since my mic's blocking it, I'm taking it off.
Well, you're taking
So
yours off.
there we go. So, but I'll take a photo and I'll include it so you can get a good look at
I
the.
love I love this mask. It was a gift from Jimmy on Brutal Dudes. Uh, it's not going to make the whole thing though, because obviously we're going to get into some serious topics here, and I want you guys to see the emotion on my face.
Yeah, there'll be emotions. There's for sure.
We're gonna be emoting.
So wow, I don't know where to begin. So last year, I believe last year, I've tried to block it out,
Yes.
but we discussed a karate Christmas miracle. Uh, Given the similarities in title, you can very well assume that these are from the same great cinematic mind. Uh, I hadn't connected the dots. I guess I didn't look particularly closely, but the Mario Del Vecchio, who's the young lad in both, takes the lead in both movies. I'm going to assume it's his son. you know,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to definitely assume it's his son because in this movie, so IMDb told me it was going to be an hour and a half, and I was like, oh boy, that's a lot. It's actually 76 minutes long, which was a reprieve. So I'm like, okay, that's less. That's going to be good. But the opening and closing credits saved a lot of money on them because they're basically home movies of Mario wrestling and playing football. He's a good athlete, but and you can kind of tell they're home movies not cleared through SAG because like when he's wrestling, his opponents' faces are blurred and all these things.
Everyone's face but his.
Yeah,
And where his dad pops up here and there, the only face is not blurred. So these are definitely these are what did he choose to go by on his website? Big Kenny D. These are Big Kenny D's home videos of his son at his actual sporting events.
Yeah, I don't know why he doesn't go by the nickname Deep V, which we'll talk a little
We'll
bit
get
more
there.
about in a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's like four to 4.5 minutes long of these videos with
And that's just the intro. So I'm glad you brought this up. I was going to wait until the end. So I don't know if you noticed, but the movie stops and the credits start at about the 1 hour mark.
yeah, because
So
there was 15 minutes of
there's there's a
credits left.
solid
I noticed that.
15 plus minutes of credits at the end of the movie. It goes through the entire credits twice. Once over more home videos and then a more standard credit crawl. And also you have the 4 or 5 minutes in the beginning of home videos with text over them. So essentially this movie is under an hour when you when you lop the credits off of it. This is actually a thing I've seen a bunch of times, and I've had to do it to a much smaller degree on a couple of movies I worked on where you get a distribution deal and the distributor wants a really specific time frame for the movie. They sell movies or they have, a network set up where they're looking for movies that are an exact length. So we've had situations where like we need one more minute in the movie or something like that. So that's where you get in Evil Bong, for example, the CGI transitions of the weed leaves and stuff spinning around. Because Warner Brothers was like, it needs to be 1 minute longer than the movie that you have. In this case, though, they came back and were like, this needs to be about 20 minutes longer than what you guys had
And old
delivered.
Deep V said, not a problem. Yeah. Yeah, so we could probably wrap it up now and just run some credits. We'd be just fine. But we won't because we care too deeply about the Bog Panda audience. So we're gonna. I'd actually don't know how much we care about them since we're talking about this movie, and that might result in them watching this movie, which would probably result in them being mad at us. But at least you won't go in unprepared because
Yeah.
there will be spoilers aplenty in this spoiler-ish spoiled
This gonna
movie.
be a spoiler heavy, yeah, spoiler heavy review. And if you haven't, obviously go back. This is a sequel to Karate Christmas Miracle. It's kind of anthology style. I mean, it's all the same cast, but they're playing different characters this time around because this movie hates you the way that Halloween hates continuity and its own audience. So you have the whole cast playing different characters. It's the same kind of premise though as the first one. So it's not just them cashing in on the success question mark of Karate Christmas Miracle. It is the same setup where he has to complete a task before Christmas to save somebody. But now he's a different character.
I tend to want to refer to these as being part of the Kennyverse, and so there's multiple threads being that you can see familiar faces in different roles and different characters. It's kind of like the MCU multiverse, but just with horrible actors and no storyline, confusing, many confusing things.
I will say just a top line thing. If you've seen the first one, this one is marginally better made than the first one is. Again, marginally. That's a
Marginally,
super, yeah, it's a super low bar that was set. And once again, just like I did the first time, I'm just going to throw out at the beginning, I'm not going to make fun of the kid. So that's just my own personal thing. Just like when we did the first one, Big Kenny D is on the table. Although I feel like he and I would get along in real life. So if you're watching this, I know you don't live far from me. You should hit me up.
yeah. Yeah, preferably on days when I'm not recording with Mike or something like that, because I can, my life is complete without you, Kenny P. So you and Mike go off and uh, wrestle and do all the kinds of things.
You're right over in New Jersey. We're really close to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, so the last time you declared that and I didn't. I think I'm gonna no holds barred. However, this time well, I mean he's not of like the Jared Leto quality of actor yet. Um he was he was surrounded by things that were so much worse that there wasn't much I had negative to say about him. It was um, his character's a little weird. It's not his fault, but he was. I mean, of the many kind of problems with this movie and issues with this movies, he really doesn't contribute to many of them. So I'll go light on him too, but it's not because of any sense of morality like Mike. It's just because I didn't find anything suitable to pick on him about. So that's where we go on that. But this had according to IMDb, which is a liar because they were saying it was an hour and a half. They also listed the budget at around $2 million for this movie, estimated. And I'm going to assume that's because they assembled an Oscar-worthy cast for this crappy movie inside a even crappier movie that they did here, including Jimmy Walker, Michael Winslow,
Todd Bridges.
What's his Martin Cove, Jimmy Walker, Todd Bridges, and Gilbert Godfrey.
And Martin Cove, again, another returning cast member from the first movie in a different role again.
Yeah. A puzzling role. We'll talk more about that later. But
and this is why, so I actually forgot that I did watch this when I watched Karate Christmas Miracle. And I even mentioned it during our review because I pointed out I'd seen many reviews of the first one online. That's how I found out about it. A lot of people said that they felt that the Cove footage and the footage of Eric Roberts might have been stock footage that he purchased and shoved into the movie because it didn't make sense in the context of the movie. But that's not the case because Martin Cove is in this one as well. And if you go to his website, he works a lot with Eric Roberts. There's a lot of candid pictures of them hanging out and stuff. And he's somehow involved in, if not involved in Big Kennedy's production company, he's in most of the films. So if he's not an actual producer, I wouldn't be surprised if he is. But Eric Roberts now does a lot of these low budget faith-based movies. And this is, just to throw out there, this is a faith-based movie. So it is listed in the Christian categories where you would find those things. But just like the first one, in fact, even more so than the first one this time, I would say it has even less to do with Christianity than the first one did. I feel like the couple mentions of God were thrown in just to keep that faith-based tag.
Yeah, there was a pray at one point, a mention of praying at one point.
Yeah.
But pretty light. But there is occasionally that. And then there's the ever-present cross nestled in the center of the deep plunging neckline that Ken likes to wear with his t-shirts. So we got the subliminal cross beaming at you, keeping away vampires. So there is acknowledgement that there's a thing called a religion exists at several moments in this, but no real application of it.
And I would argue the first movie, even when we reviewed it, I did comment that I didn't feel like the religious element was all that strong. It's really just used as a plot device in the first movie where Jesus tells him he'll bring his father back if he can teach himself to be a black belt before Christmas. Other than that, though, religion doesn't really play much of a role in it. Whereas this time, it's even less.
Unless the kid in this movie is supposed to be Jesus. Because if you think about it, the miracles that do occur.
That's true.
He is the cause of the miracles. Getting that black belt in this movie, and big spoiler for this movie, creating a movie that is so funny it can make a person in a coma laugh and therefore come out of their coma.
Yes.
So these are miracles, which of course then makes Kenny V God. So this is another.
I didn't even think of it that way. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think you cracked the code to these movies.
I think so. But there's much more to talk about. So,
Yeah, there's a lot more to talk about. So the premise, if for some reason you didn't see our previous review or didn't see either of these movies, essentially what it is Kenny D. So he has his own production company, and he pumps out these faith-based movies, similar to what Kirk Cameron does. In fact, these actually might look a little bit better than some of the stuff I've seen from Kirk Cameron and his people, which is a super low bar. Again, these don't look good. Let me stress that. Um, but slightly better than some of the Kirk Cameron product I've seen. He pumps out these faith-based movies. That's a whole cottage industry and a talk in and of itself, where there are people who produce these movies and then pre-sell them to like church groups and religious bookstores and turn a quick profit off of them. You can argue whether or not faith has any role in that really, or if they're just exploiting an angle to get pre-sell some DVDs. Like I said, this very little to do with religion, so don't let that sell you or turn you off of watching this movie, essentially. But he, in these two movies, he's cast his son in a different role in each
as
movie
Jesus.
as Jesus. Essentially, though, it's the same premise, but anthology style, I guess, is what they're going for, where they're a different father and son and essentially his son has to complete some sort of a task starting in the beginning of December and complete it before Christmas in order to save someone. So in the first movie, his father, again played by Kenny D, is murdered by a man dressed as a clown at the behest of Eric Roberts' villain character at a movie theater during a birthday party, which was also a gun rally. That's the premise of the movie. We're not making that up. And if he can teach himself to become a black belt, which all that requires is breaking a board. If he can teach himself to become a black belt by Christmas, Jesus will bring his dad back from the dead. And if not, I guess the hell with that kid and his family. So in this instance, as Kelly said, he's a different character. He has to, God or whoever wants him to quit wrestling, which he is so amazing at. And he wants him to quit wrestling and make a movie, which he doesn't know how to do. Plus, he's a child. Make a movie. And if that movie is funny enough, it will wake up his friend who's in a coma at home in his own bed with no sort of care whatsoever.
Yeah. Only nuances I'd add to all of that is I'm not sure it's a cottage industry. I think it's more of a manger industry that he's going with there. But also, just the other mention is that on the karate portion, not only is all you're required to do is break a board to get the black belt, that doesn't require any level of supervision or approval or governing board. You just, and mom and dad are watching, yep, he broke a board, good to go. There's your black belt. They have them in stock and they can just kind of hand it out. So it's good to go. And apparently they also make fine garland on a Christmas tree, which I didn't realize. Another theme that runs through this here is that Ken or God, depending on how you want to look at his role in these movies. His wife is always a good 30 years younger than him and about 150 pounds lighter. So
I can't blame him.
Well, I mean, if it's your movie,
yeah, if you're making the movie and you're casting your own wife, you're gonna go with whatever your best options are.
I have a hard time suspending my disbelief to go. I mean, although his wife attractive is this one. His first his karate wife was a very attractive, and so it's like I don't see this, and there he is cruising around in his deep V t-shirt and receding hairline and all kinds of good stuff, and it's just I don't know. I don't think he's a catch, but I don't mean to blaspheme. I don't mean to be dissing on God's looks. God, Kelly. Yeah, but Ken/God, I don't know. I think he's not a looker, my opinion. But so we got that going too. So as evidenced by this belt buckle, I was a wrestler. Not quite as good as Jesus, but a good wrestler. And I think I would just call him God and Jesus for this whole review.
Makes sense.
Super pleased with that, that I've come up with that. But did okay enough to win a belt buckle and a couple things there. So they and Mario Novaco, that Veco, is actually, I guess, quite the athlete. And so the footage of him wrestling, the younger kids, he's definitely doing a good job. They seem actually to be mildly accurate or decently accurate on. They'll talk about moves. There's special moves that they came up with. I don't really know the splay swish, whatever it was called. I don't know what that was. But they will talk about Half Nelson and different things there. Arm drag, yeah, these are all things. But then he talked about a move called the head smash, which, at least in Indiana, they didn't teach us the head smash in Indiana amateur wrestling, so that may just be an East Coast thing. But they
It's a Jersey specific move.
yeah, I think it might be a Jersey specific move, but yeah, it kind of kicks off him, through the 4 to 5 minutes of footage. They actually kind of start to, well, so we got to start the movie sort of. So there's some voiceover stuff kind of occurring on how remarkably amazing Jesus is and wrestling and all these types of things. And then at the end, he's being interviewed by a reporter, and where he makes the big announcement that it's 40 days until Christmas. And he is going to stop wrestling so that he can dedicate his life to the cinematic arts and make a movie that is so funny it'll laugh the coma right out of you. And so, which is just there's science behind that, folks. Look it up. But there's that.
There's two things at this early stage of the movie that I want to point out. The first is, as you would expect in a faith-based film, I'm going to make an analogy with Showgirls. So in Showgirls, something that a lot of people love to point out is that there's a point in the movie when Gina Gershon's character is introduced where she is surrounded by press after a good night of her show in Vegas. And there's a fantastic commentary on most of the DVD and Blu-ray releases called The Greatest Movie of All Time, by this stand-up comedian who does basically a one-man show based around Showgirls that he does as the commentary track. And he mentions, how it's really important to watch this scene because not only are they surrounded by paparazzi and reporters, they're international reporters. There's like BBC there and different things, people with different accents. He's like interviewing a stripper. there is international press of how good this stripper did this night at being a stripper. So when this whole opening montage is happening and there's the reporter voiceover, like this is a news piece that's being done, like a 60 minute style produced piece. And then the interview with him at the end. And I was like, for children's sports in New Jersey, this is what's being done. So I wasn't a sports kid, and you come from the wrestling world. So correct me if I'm wrong. Was there a lot of news reports about your wrestling matches?
Not paparazzi level. There would be, in the sports section, results on the match. They'd say, here's who won or who lost on local high schools. But the coverage wasn't front page. It wasn't international. And it wasn't even interstate. so that's my experience.
And they do make a point to say he's supposed to be 10 in this movie. So this is 10-year-old kids wrestling that is getting national TV coverage. So much like in Showgirls, when you stop and think about never having seen strippers on the news before, at least not here in Philadelphia. And if they were going to show strippers anywhere on the news, it'd be Philadelphia, I think. I think we've earned it.
In my top 3 candidates.
The ladies are working hard here.
Yeah.
So we've earned it. We should have had it by now. the other thing, obviously, so I'm glad you brought this up because I was curious because it was obvious right from the beginning, like, okay, this is his real wrestling matches. That's why everybody else is blurred out in it to save a few bucks. Um, I was curious if he was good at it because I never wrestled in school, so I didn't know if what I was watching was actually good in any way. Then going back to Showgirls, in Showgirls, you're supposed to buy into the idea that whenever people watch Elizabeth Berkley dance, they are enthralled by this. That's like that's the MacGuffin of the movie, is that she's supposed to be this amazing dancer, which is what gets her all of this attention. But then you watch Elizabeth Berkley dance, and while I'm not a dancer either, I can understand that what I'm being told and what I'm seeing don't align in this.
Yeah,
So
she
I
was.
was curious if what he's doing was good.
Yeah, yeah. For that age level, in particular, but I mean, it's definitely solid skills. And so I'd say, he, and the IMDb world and other kind of write ups on it, they're kind of like, this kid's like a world class wrestler. I kind of watch it like, well, I don't know if I go world class. I mean, I think he's got a pretty good record. I think based on the footage you're showing where he's basically pinning kids right and left. So I think he's probably done okay for himself. But yeah, I'd say that part. Anytime anybody, not him, even brushed up against the wrestling component, then it was, the showdown at the end. I want to jump ahead, but pretty um, accurate wrestling was not represented. Accurate amateur wrestling was not well represented in the highly confusing ransom scene at the end. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Um, so the movie itself. So the first movie, there were many moments of confusion, weird cuts in between things where it was just like, okay, we're done with this scene, on to the next scene. And so it was jarring and you didn't necessarily know where things were picking up. And so this started to happen in this movie as well. However, it's because it was jumping to, we were being treated to a coma curing movie through this movie. So we were getting, eventually I figured that out. It took me a little bit because the way the last one ran, I was like, oh, okay. So now they're talking to a warden who's a blind warden, which I just think, I'm all for, let's not prejudge folks. Let's don't let folks do, let the job they want to do and all that. But I am going to at least suggest that somewhat high on the list of being a warden would be to be able to see. And so I don't, that's it. That's just me. That may be a little sightist on my part, but I just think that job in particular is not a bad job to have vision. I don't know if you want to kind of crawl out on that thin sheet of ice or not.
I'm just gonna say I'm gonna distance myself from Kelly here. I have no problem with people with visual disabilities.
Well, I tried to appropriately caveat that I don't either. I'm just saying this
But I
seems like a
really
job where that's not great. That's all.
I think people with vision impairments should be allowed to have jobs, unlike Kelly.
Again, not what I said. But they start to, I'm gonna say this, and Mike's gonna paint me in a sightist corner, and he's gonna try and put a halo on his, kind of stack it on his horns and just let that go. But you all know the truth. You've watched a show or two. You know how this rolls. So I guess I can redeem myself partially. I did not approve of Kenny D's interpretation of American Sign Language.
So I'm not an expert on ASL, but I feel like it was a misrepresentation.
I believe it was too, and also a misrepresentation of acting as well. But yeah, so he was in a wheelchair, and then I say I guess deaf, required to use unable to speak. So he was using a very interesting flailing about of arms in all kinds of goofy ways there. And that was, gosh, I can't remember the agent's last name now. That he went by many names in this movie, but I don't know if I got it here in my notes here what it was. Agent, gosh, where is it? Uh, Torman, something like that.
Truman sounds right.
Yeah, maybe it was Truman. So, handwriting got a little scrawled as I got deeper into the movie. It was kind of a problem. Um, but so then we're getting kind of we get Gilbert Godfrey provides some backstory around um, the that he's in the wheelchair because he got drunk boating, boating while drunk, and that's why he's in a wheelchair. Um, Comparable ridiculous reason for the other issues there, and and then it's like they're talking to the warden, and then there's a lady, and she's now in a prison with really nice cells. Look a lot like rooms in a hallway, but again, who might have judged on that? And nicely enough, a calendar counter for her number of days that she's going to be incarcerated, which appears to be looks like a year and 100 days or so that she's going to have to be for whatever she did. But Gilbert tore a sheet off and said she's 1 day down. So, um, so that was weird. That was going on, but that's actually the start of the coma curing movie, or not the start because I don't know where they jumped in, but it was a piece because we get various pieces in the Kennyverse of this movie within a movie. I thought Gilbert did a fine job.
Are you a Gilbert Godfrey fan, or were you a Gilbert Godfrey fan?
Yeah. I think I can still be a Gilbert Godfrey fan. To
I
stop
wasn't
being a
sure
fan.
how it worked. Yeah, I guess he would continue to be a fan, though he
Yeah, I
continues.
would. Yeah,
He no longer continues to produce content.
yeah. Even I don't kick and spit on people's graves like you do apparently, and just say, "Oh, fine, you're dead." Well, then you're worthless. No one can be a fan of you anymore. So that's not the way I roll, Mike.
I do
So
apologize, and luckily for Gilbert Godfrey, he didn't have any sort of disability for you to hate him.
yeah, but he could have been blind in this. I had no problem. I think he had a hard time finding the calendar, but that's fine. So, but yeah, so I thought he did. I've liked him. I liked a lot of his stuff. It's definite. He's acquired taste on all that. Um, the the uh, the whole kind of his backstory on the Aristocats joke. That's just amazing to just kind of watch that segment on that and watch him just go to levels that you just hard to imagine. But it was pretty amazing stuff. So I liked him. How about you? Were you a fan since you can't
Yeah.
be anymore to your according to your
Yes.
rules?
Yes. Yeah. So a weird touchstone for me with him, and I say weird only because I think it's a movie that I at the time didn't realize, but now know a lot of people don't like, is Adventures of Ford Fairlane
Okay.
with him and Andrew Dice Clay. I thought first off, I like that movie. I think it's a fun movie. It's sure, is it highbrow entertainment? No, but I think it's a funny movie, and I think he's actually exceptionally good in that movie.
Yeah, I mean it's no wrestling Christmas miracle, but it's a good movie. It's a
But
very
I've seen him in a handful of things that I've really liked him in over the years. I think my favorite thing of his, though, outside of Ford Fairlane, did you ever see the video he did that went viral of him doing audiobooks?
yes.
Yeah, with 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah. So that's I mean not unlike uh the Aristocats kind of thing, but it yeah, it was an interesting thing there. So he's here. I mean, and so all the big names apparently uh Case who's who I have been referring to as Jesus, but I think I'm going to go to Case at this point in time. Case apparently had a draw, and he was able, given the fact he was a super amazing wrestler, amateur wrestler, he was able to pull in all these big names for his film. And so Gilbert's first of one of many, and acquits himself, to me, possibly the best out of all of the guest stars in this movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So,
He's the best performance in the whole movie. I feel comfortable saying that for myself. He was the best part of the movie.
which you give him no credit for now, because you don't have to, apparently.
The one thing I will say, and Kelly's already kind of touched on it, the idea that Jesus was able to bring all of the celebrities to do cameos in his movie, that he put together. Other than his parents do sporadically throughout the movie say like, "Hey, this might not work. Don't get your hopes too high." Other than the occasional, and that's not even that much a pushback, just like, know that that's a possibility. It seems like everybody's pretty much on board that this will work.
Yeah.
Like right from the beginning. Like Gilbert Godfrey and all these other celebrities who were playing themselves as cameos in his movie, to his parents in general, like bankrolling this, because they do suggest that his rich CIA/wrestler father, also an actor played by God, um, contributed quite a bit of money to this, as suggested multiple times. So it seems like, other than saying like, "Hey, it might not work," for the most part, people do think this will probably work, which is insane. that's that's one of the things in your suspension of disbelief that you just have to buy into pretty early. That there's no character like, "This is crazy. This is, if you want to do this for your friend, great, but this is definitely not going to work." But everybody's just like, "Yeah, no, he has faith, so it's going to work."
Yeah. Yeah. It's the first I'd ever heard of this as the method to cure coma, if
Yeah,
you will.
it's it. They're so invested in that it goes beyond the faith-based thing into, you would almost think that there's some precedent for this. Like, oh yeah, that happened once before. He's ripped from the headlines, Law and Order style.
Don't you remember Dr. Dumb and Dumber, who was able to pull so many people
Yeah.
out of their coma, curing coma right and left? But yeah, and we find this out later in the movie. But yeah, and you need some pretty serious coin to be pulling in the Jimmy Walkers of the world and the Todd Bridges and all that. So his father did do some funding to kind of help, kind of a Taylor Swift-esque parent support kind of thing. And but we find out later that's due to the massive fortune he's built up due to his protein shake commercials and online sports gambling. So this is which I found odd, and
Yeah.
but again,
That was the
as God, he's probably going to do well in sports gambling because he's going to know. So it all makes sense.
I get everything that's in this movie except that one line where she praises his online gambling abilities. And I was just like, this is where I really feel like, okay, I'm not religious. You can say that this is my own bias against these type of movies, but I do look at these as cynical cash grabs for the most part when these type of movies get pumped out. Again, still not as bad as what Kirk Cameron does, but up there. And I do look at these with kind of a cynical viewpoint. But that was the one time I was just like, I feel like he wasn't even trying to make it look faith-based when he's like, great at online gambling.
Well, yeah, and I think it really just kind of felt like, as the hours and hours and hours that they put in to develop this intricate plot and the weaving through there, they eventually said, okay, so this movie gets made, and we're talking about, but then gets stolen, and the folks that have stolen it are requesting $1 million to get the it back, and so they decide they're going to pay that. The husband. And we'll need to get to why the husband's not available in a moment, but I think they created the $1 million knot where it was like, well, okay, they need to somehow, in a day show up with, okay, we've got $1 million we put in a bag that we can now exchange for this movie, which frankly I would invest less than than $1 million in. And I don't believe it has the future in streaming that every character in this movie seems to think it does. But they said, crap, how are they going to have $1 million? No one has $1 million lying around the house. Well, unless they were a protein shake tycoon who, in addition, was able to just win like crazy in sports internet gambling. So, but it's like, we got to come up with something. That or he's like, just eats his protein shakes commercials. Oh, protein shake commercials that you can only get, $200,000, $300,000 for that. How's he double that? How's he triple that? Sports gambling on the
which
internet.
he's obviously great at.
Yes, as God. So
As God would be.
further reinforcing the threads that run through here. But yeah, let's talk about why Dad's not available. Wasn't a clown killing him at a gun show clown infested birthday party this time. He has apparently a Christmas tradition. What is that Christmas tradition, Mike?
He goes to the Congo to wrestle an elephant.
Yeah, apparently all sorts of animals.
Yeah.
And military and dictators and other issues as well. But yeah, it's apparently wrestling in the Congo every holiday season is what he does. And then what I was a little confused by, I couldn't tell it was a map or a throw rug or what. He had something rolled up in his hand. And he goes, well, I got to go to the Congo to go wrestle. And I was like,
so I think that was supposed to be a poster for his wrestling match.
Okay.
You just never get a clear shot of it. But there is a couple shots where you can kind of see like the corners of it. It looked like a person on one side and then a elephant on the other. So I think it was meant to be a poster for the wrestling match. But I guess they either didn't have the Photoshop skills or didn't want to put out the money to get a better looking poster done. So it looked like something that was like hand painted.
It's just a corner of it. So, okay, give him a tease.
Yeah, you never get a clear shot of it, but I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and apparently the event is the coup in the Congo, which turns out to be very prophetic. Yet again, another little breadcrumb.
God, it is prophetic.
Yeah. So, yeah. So there's that, and then so Julie McCullough is back, who as Miss Kitty Cat in this one, much like her first character, the crazy professor, the eccentric professor from the first Karate movie, and just as goofy and dumb and ridiculous as always. Oddly enough, there is. I think they work hard to make her look kind of disheveled in her character's roles, because in the coma curing movie, she's in that as well. She's looking pretty fine in that. I was like, oh, that is her. I just barely, because she cleans up nice, and so when you don't crazy her up.
I noticed that too. She did look significantly better in the movie within the movie segments. So yeah, maybe you're onto something there. Maybe they try and make her look bad as her main character. And the same thing with Karate Christmas, because this was made a couple years after Karate Christmas Miracle, so she's older in this one, but looks way better when they do the movie within the movie segments.
Yeah, it looked very similar to, there was her IMDb sports a picture from her in her very kind of early years of acting, and it was not easy to draw that very straight line from those photos to the characters we were seeing, but very easy to draw that line to the movie within a movie type of thing. So good for her on that. So it's this kind of Bonnie and Clyde, it's dumbest and dumbester kind of thing, and they are quite the thing. Because one of the main traits of Mr. Wiener, Chuckles Wiener,
Chuckles
is
Wiener and Miss Kitty Cat,
yep. There you
the
go.
characters' names.
We're not making that stuff up. We're
That's
maybe
their name.
attributing names to some characters that we've come up with for here.
Yeah,
These were their
not
names.
those. That's the names of the characters. That's important for you to know.
Yeah, and but apparently Chuckles he has takes great deal of pride in his accents, which they so immediately kind of go, so he's really bad, right? And you get that, and he actually grew on me to how horrible his accents were, but they just kind of kept going back to the well on that every opportunity. But a couple of nice little moments at the beginning about, oh, you speak French? He goes, who did that? Moi. I said, did you speak French, or do you speak French? Si. So some of that was nice, but they kind of kept coming back to that well a little more often than I would have. But
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It got a little bit of a laugh with that initial the moi and see thing. But again, it overstays its welcome. And at one point in the last sequence when they're doing it, it gets, I'll say, problematic if you wanted to look at it in a more woke kind of way. He does a couple of quick ethnic sounding accents that are like, huh, that's couldn't do that in a non-faith based movie
that's
that
right.
has a very specific audience.
That's probably not going to include the people you'd be offending.
Yeah.
So
So yeah. But so I wanted to ask your opinion on this. So what Kelly's getting at with this is these two characters essentially they steal the movie, as we mentioned, and they're trying to either ransom it back to the family for $1 million, or they're also trying to sell it on their own, whichever one gives them the most money and comes through first, which I actually thought was a clever element to the plot, like that they weren't putting all their eggs in one basket. It belies the writing of the movie. Like you would think you were watching a movie that was a little bit smarter, because rarely do you see the villains have backup plans to these heists and things like that. So the fact that they were hedging their bets on that was pretty good. Um, I did wonder though, and I wondered if you pick up on this, was this whole theft thing, two villain thing. Do you think they're just trying to copy Home Alone and give the a villain like a Home Alone style heist villain kind of thing?
so I think there's echoes of that for sure, kind of in there, um, because it is. I'd say, yeah, I could see some of that because it was a case of again, two individuals working together who um, are not neither bulb burns bright in terms of that. Um, I think Ruthless People was a really good example of a movie where there was one character who was just like so outstandingly. I think maybe Bill Pullman played him. I'm not sure, but he a very kind of dim character. Whoever played him's down there now. I super hope I'm right, but I'm not sure. uh,
Just to overdub it really poorly.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure that was. But just a super dumb character. Give the bag to Bozo. It was just awesome. If you haven't seen Ruthless People, check it out. But I think echoes of that too, just where it's just too. But I could see a little bit of a Home Alone kind of thing going on because it's just too inept knuckleheads. The weird part, and do you think this was maybe they forgot, or so again, folks? We told you this is going to be a lot of spoilers running through here. Turns out at the end of the movie, um, God's brother, no, God's wife's stepbrother.
God's wife's stepbrother, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Which
um,
they never make that distinction until that scene
yeah,
of
yeah,
stepbrother versus
yeah.
brother.
Which, yeah,
Yeah.
seemed to be late. Introduced early on, just liquoring it up clearly, looked at me like about 10 o'clock in the morning, beer in hand, already pretty hammered. Seemed like a pretty worthless uncle to begin with. Not someone you want to entrust this coma curing movie to, but again, who am I to judge in terms of their decision processes? But Kitty Cat and the Wiener, they dressed as a fairly impressive Grinch and Cindy Lou Who. So props to that. Steal all the presents and the movie.
It's all the presents that God left for Jesus to get
Yep.
on Christmas morning because he wouldn't be there because he'll be in the Congo
He's in
wrestling.
the Congo wrestling.
Yeah.
So I don't quite understand why they said, "Hey, drunk uncle, take all the presents away from the house where we'll be giving him the presents, and then take this movie and make copies, and nobody really even thinks you're going to be capable of it. But we're still going to give it to you anyway because comas aren't so bad. And if this doesn't work out, no skin off our back." But they kind of turn loose. So I do wonder, kind of tied to that, because like the Dumb and Dumber stealing stuff kind of fits all in that whole section there too. Obviously, Grinch Who Stole Christmas fits in there as well. But it turns out, spoiler folks, in the movie, drunk uncle's in with them. He's part of the scam, and I'm like, is he? Was he halfway through the movie? Did you change your mind? There was one scene where he peeked through a door where you go, okay, something's kind of up. But I think they kind of had kind of blacked out that earlier portion. And said, oh no, we're going to make him part of the scheme now. So, were you surprised at how many direct references they made to other films and other movies and other things that were just blatant?
Yes. Yeah. So, and going back to him, I also felt that was kind of pulled out of their ass at the last minute. I don't think that was their original plan. I'm sure they would say otherwise, but I don't think that was the original plan because they pull a Juno in the end where, have you seen the movie Juno?
No.
So this is a mild
not
spoiler.
faith-based.
Yeah, not faith-based. So this is a spoiler, so if you want to cover your ears. In Juno, there's a character who decides they don't want to have a kid. They just don't want to be a parent. So they don't want to, a character's planning on adopting a kid and then decides against it. The movie then immediately goes crazy hard to vilify that character rather than just let them make the decision. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's revealed that this character is like pedophile and an almost rapist and all this other stuff when there's nothing like that with that character up until that point. They just obviously felt the need, like, obviously you have to love children, otherwise there's something wrong with you. So they needed to vilify the character. A lot of movies do this, but Juno, to me, is just one of the most ridiculous, over-the-top ways it's been done in a movie, especially a movie that was praised for its writing that I think seems like it was written by an incontinent child. So this movie does the Juno thing, where like the second they decide he has to be a villain, that's when he's the stepbrother, not her real brother. Like they're pulling out the faith-based version of the pedophile rapist character.
Nope, I can see that. Yeah, because I think somewhere stupid drunk uncle became stupid drunk evil stepbrother uncle.
Yeah, I don't think that was their plan the whole time. I do, so to draw another Home Alone distinction, and I doubt that because I don't think this was their plan, so I doubt this is what they had in mind, but they could take this now and run with it and fall back on it. For anybody who doesn't know, in Home Alone, the uncle who doesn't get along with the Kevin character was originally written to be in on the plan. He had set up the family. That's why they're overly fixated on getting into that one house after they've already robbed the rest of the neighborhood. Why don't they just move on? It's because that was their original target. And overly vilifying him in the beginning of the movie wasn't just for comedic stuff. It's because it was going to be revealed at the end he was with the Wet Bandits and he was setting up his own family to be robbed. So they decided to cut that out because they thought it made the movie seem too convoluted. But there's kind of the remnants of it in there with their fixation on having to rob that house out of all the houses in the neighborhood and him seeming over the top in his bad uncle stuff in the beginning of the movie. So I guess they could say that too, which again would just bring it more in line with Home Alone again.
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Um, other moments in there that were head scratchers for me was, um, again, we're back to Wiener and the cat. There many restaurant stops with them. There we see them eating a lot. We see her not really understanding the difference between Chinese and Italian food and where certain countries are located, or is Mexico up or down in terms of direction to go. She has a lot of challenges on there, but she was wondering why they had gone to this other place to eat, which seems to be what they do all the time. Anyways, go to places to eat. But he was like, "Well, I need to make the ransom call in public at a restaurant on my personal cell phone. But since we're sitting at a restaurant, it can't be traced," which I I struggled with. I didn't think the criminal mastermind had totally sorted that out. So the tracing part was a little bit of an issue. It was like, so I think this is your phone. So they may not be able to ping the towers and know where you made the call from, but they'll be able to go, oh, that's Mike's phone. There you go.
Right.
So that seems like a problem, but compounded by when you make your ransom calls, Mike, and I know you've done a few in the day, how often have
I've
you
been known to make a ransom call.
Do I need a crowd? Do I need people who could be over you? Do I need a salad bar right behind me so people are passing at a regular basis?
It'd be great. Lots of distractions, ambient noise so I can't properly hear them. And then maybe somebody could give away my position as well. Seems like a good idea.
Yep. Who's Big Mac? Who ordered a Big Mac? That might be a clue to where things are going on. So,
and we all know McDonald's are snitches.
That's so we've learned. It's like so. So obviously you've done no ransom calls from McDonald's, but
yeah, I'm still here.
Stick with the salad bar stuff because that's the way to go.
That's a strictly Sizzler deal.
Yeah. And in a moment of silence for Burger King, or Burger Chef rather. Burger King, you're probably still fine. Burger Chef. Although Burger King is running a cabal to control the world. More on that later. But Burger Chef, they premiered the works, the salad bar for your hamburger, where you could buy a super cheap hamburger and then go load it up with every topping imaginable. They had, roast, they had flank steak, big wheels of cheese. Just there's all sorts of loaded with stuff. It was awesome. But so there's phone trace up to Mexico. Mr. Keen. So in this very in-depth process of they've now got on the hard drive, which this did not strike me as a couple that could sort out. There is a digital movie on a hard drive, and I can play it on something. I just didn't see him be able to sort that out. And it seemed to be implied that they were going to be using their smart TV to watch it. And I'm no tech expert, but none of the portable hard drives that I've ever had have an HDMI out. So I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did somehow from there. But so they've got, they start to go, wow, this is really good, which it's not. But anyway,
as you're watching that, you start to realize that they're trying to gaslight you about the movie you're watching.
Yeah. And so they pitch it to this, in a universe of strange characters. I gotta think Mr. Keen is at the top of the heap for me. because so did I was this is later in the movie. I'm groggy. Things are, it's I'm doing my best. I'm hanging in there. I'm still going like, why did they have the ransom call in the restaurant? But they got there, and so they go to show because now not only can this hard drive play on a smart TV, apparently a theater can very easily project it as well, and he loves it. And but he's like a man of many voices, and then I couldn't tell. Is it like, is he his assistant and himself and his partner?
Yes.
He
Yeah.
is. Okay. And then so he talks, the other part is like, it's like he puts the phone up to his ear when he's answering himself, but when he's talking to the person that in theory is on the phone, he takes the phone away. And so I was really struggling to go, this is a weird guy. That's about all I came away with.
Yeah, I think it was poor screen direction in the scene. But yeah, it's supposed to be that he's pretending to have a business partner and a secretary and all the other stuff and doing their voices as he does it. And again, I've seen it twice now, which is twice as many times as Kelly. So that's the only reason I think I have a better grasp on a few of these more out
Nuanced.
there non sequitur scenes.
Yep, you can pick up the nuance of that a
Yeah.
lot better. Um, so and I apologize. Um, I don't have the actor's name here, but in IMDb they listed. Oh, actually, here's the name. He was supposed to be in the movie as well. So this is something I think Sean Schick, who has personally attacked my IMDb page and said that my nickname is Meatbag, which it's not. Just to clarify, it's not. Never has been. So I think Sean went after this movie too, because the first thing under trivia is that this actor's name was supposed to be in the movie. He's this big, tall guy, kind of he had a chairbitis or something like that, but it kind of creates a prominent lower jaw. And so he has a very kind of, noticeable kind of face. And so kind of plays a villain a lot in movies and all this, or intimidating characters. He was supposed to be in this movie, but his pet mini horse got attacked by three pit bulls was what took him out of the movie, which one sounds like part of the storyline of this movie. It could be. Also sounds like somebody's scamming us there, but also given this world could be true. But it would have. I don't know what character he would have played on there. Maybe he would have been Kitty Cat's partner in crime. I don't know. But I thought that was kind of another kind of interesting thing on all the little twists and turns of this.
It wasn't Robert Zadar, was it?
Yes. As
Oh,
I
okay.
listed earlier, weren't you paying attention?
Sorry, I didn't read it when you put it.
Jeez.
I'm a big Robert Zadar fan. I had no idea he was supposed to be involved in this.
Well, according to the highly trustworthy internet, and IMDb, which clearly scrubbing practices are weak because I'm still sitting out there as Meatbag as a nickname, so they're not strong on protecting the borders. Robert Lazar is supposed to be in it, and his pet mini horse got attacked by three pit bulls, which I'm
Huh.
sorry, I'm sorry it happened, but it's just weird.
I
Just
feel like
different.
in Robert Zadar's world, that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of his work?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, apparently not enough to have his name immediately come back to me after reading it, and actually read it right before this. I need to, because I know it was attacked by three somethings, and I was like, so it was a mini horse. They got attacked by, were they hyenas? Oh no, they're pit bulls. That's what it was. So yeah, I think he'd have fit. I think he'd been a welcome addition to this movie. Maybe he'd have been in the movie within a movie. Now, since you
Yeah, I would think he would have to be.
yeah, since you have pointed out repeatedly that you have over twice the expertise in this movie than me, a badge I wouldn't be wearing quite so proudly, but you do you. Um, will you please explain to me the rough plot line of the movie within the movie that can cure a coma?
So
No nuance,
here,
just high points.
here's the broad strokes of it. A judge has imprisoned bad doctors in an abandoned hospital to pay for their crimes in the healthcare system. That's the broad strokes of it.
Um, why is Gallagher in there? So Gallagher's not in there.
This is he?
He's not.
I'm still
So
reeling that
were you
Robert
a Gallagher
Zapata is supposed
fan?
to be.
I know you couldn't be any more, Mike, but were you a Gallagher fan at some point?
So I know who Gallagher is, because of his gimmick, but I don't think I've ever actually seen one of his whole routines or anything like that. So I feel like I can't really give an informed opinion. You?
So I actually have a Gallagher record, Gallagher
Really?
comedy record. Yes.
When you
Uh,
open it, do things spray on your face? Or is it like, how does that translate? That
there's
sounded weird. Gallagher was a prop heavy comic. That's why I'm saying, out of context, that might have seemed odd.
yeah, even in context, it's a little creepy. Um, yeah, and so his biggest thing was the sledge-o-matic, where he'd smash various things with the big crescendo being a watermelon. People would attend his show, and the first many rows would all come and would be bringing ponchos and sheets of plastic to recognize that when we got to the end of the show, if you didn't have that, you were going to be leaving the show, um, with having been sprayed, as Mike put it. Um, so the
That's how Kelly leaves people when they come to his shows as well.
um, you had to go there, didn't you? So that was a ticking time bomb. As soon as you said the word spray, I'm like, okay, start the countdown clock. This is coming back again. Um, but yeah, so it was, and he used to do specials like on Showtime. I think was back when Showtime was a thing. You're not allowed to like Showtime anymore either, I think, right? But the he would do the specials on there, and the first couple I thought actually were pretty good. I enjoyed them. I mean, there was certain predictableness about it that you're going to get to the end of the show and there's going to be that. But he did some clever things. He's a sharp guy, I think, in a lot of ways, and so there was some interesting things that he would do, and just kind of clever little. A lot of stuff, a lot of word related stuff is like, why do they call them buildings when they're already built kind of joke, which, that kind of stuff, that's cool. So I kind of enjoyed a little bit of that kind of stuff. And so in his early days, got the album, and no, it just would come out of the album sleeve and play on the record player with, no issues whatsoever. So, but the reason I brought him up is one of in the, so that helps, because I never was, I couldn't figure out why the judge whose son was shot by one of the doctors, which was a funny story, which they never really got to. But then the doctor saved him. But the judge really didn't seem all that irritated about that. He seemed more irritated that they were, disrupting the conversation around other things. And he even said why they were doing it in the hospital, but I didn't understand it still in terms of, well, but it was just strange. But I guess it was just so I must have been laughing so hard coming out of the coma that was being induced upon me by this movie, that I missed some of that. But yeah, that's where Todd Bridges, and so I say Todd Bridges and Jimmy Walker while Gilbert, I thought, excelled in his delivery of things. I don't think these were the greatest moments for Jimmy Walker or Todd Bridges, who looked like in almost every scene they were in, they were sleeping on a couch and someone reached and grabbed them and threw them directly in front of the camera and said, "Say your line." They said their line, said, "You're done," and they pulled them back and let them go back to sleep. That's what it looked like to me. But
That's an accurate description.
so there was that.
Yeah, they really needed Robert Zadar to class that up.
He would have looked like he had napped well earlier. The gap between the nap and the action or the recording of the film would have been much longer with Robert Zadar.
And
So,
I can't stress enough, if you people don't know, especially our younger listeners, don't know who he is, please go watch the Maniac Cop movies. They're fantastic. It's him, Bruce Campbell, and Robert Davi. It's a great cast. Robert Davi is also a big faith-based guy, if this is your world.
there you go.
And he was in Showgirls, just to tie it all back.
There you go. The Mary Magdalene of our faith-based alignment of characters. So life goes on. There's confusion. We get to see more and more of this movie that, to me, is not coma curing. Funny enough to be, but that's
Would not have woken you up out of a coma, you're saying?
no. Matter of fact, I might have dozed off once or twice towards the end. I do remember having to back. I said, I don't really remember. How did they get $1 million? Inside, go back. Oh yeah, I must have dozed off a little there. But at the end, there's a big showdown between the wiener, the cat, and the wife and the step brother. He turns. There's a lot of nonsense around. I've created a cannon or grenades out of tennis balls. She doesn't believe him, but he kind of talks her into it. Then Jesus comes in and goes, "What are you talking about? Of course it's not. It's perfectly fine. They're tennis balls."
Then the CIA shows up.
Yeah, the CIA shows up. There's a quick pause and an overlay. I think Jesus gives the general some other top secret documentation too, somewhere in there. It's a little blurry. But again, I'm going to go back to a little bit of my experience in amateur wrestling. Evil Step.
Did the CIA often show up?
Yeah, regularly. When the paparazzi left, the CIA was next. So the kind of climactic fight scene, God comes back from the Congo and puts the wiener in a big bear hug, and I think it was an excuse for him to be able to kind of drape his arm over the guy and press it tight up against it to give the illusion that, oh, that guy's got a big bicep. No, he has flab and flesh that he was able to push against this guy's body to push it up to simulate a flexing bicep. So there might have been the hint of a tricep in there, maybe a little bit, but just a baby tricep. It was nothing big to worry about. But he was looking good. I'm not sure how often he walks around in a singlet, but apparently he does some, because that's how he shows up there. So he's got the guy in a bear hug, which is not a paralyzing move to begin with. And then the uncle now starts to threaten people, has a gun that turns out he stole from Jesus, and it's already a fake gun, so it's a non-issue there. So he's scaring that way. But then he basically takes Step Uncle down and puts him in a cradle and pins him. But the way that amateur wrestling works, when you pin somebody, that means you're able to hold their shoulders down to the mat for 3 seconds. That's a pin. There are no amateur wrestling moves that completely disable the person from moving after applied. And that's what happened here is that he does the little 3 second pinning move and actually lets go of the cradle. But now the guy's just like, I can't move, paralyzed. It's like, that's not true. Those things don't happen.
That's not true.
So it's closer to the professional wrestling finishing move. Now, if he had gone in and pile drove the guy, gave him a stunner, an RKO, then he'd be paralyzed and unable to move because that's what happens in the fake world of or the scripted or the sports entertainment world or whatever you want to call it. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, so they go off and the CIA's there, and we find out that he's not only a animal wrestler but a CIA operative and a bad actor and a protein shake mogul and quite the internet gambler. So
Who's maybe not the best example of ASL.
yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, could probably do a little bit better. Yeah, and not only in the scenes in the bad movie does he do it, he reprises some of his work in the home to say, remember when I did this? You know, this guy. And it's just like, oh, you're making it worse. I thought we were past this. We weren't gonna have to revisit it, but no, he's pretty proud of it. But yeah. So that's about all I have to say about this. Do you have anything?
So like I said, it is slightly better shot and better structured than the first one. But in a weird way, I think when you're setting the bar low like this, I would prefer the first one over this only because if you're going to watch a crazy movie, go all the way with it. And the first one is definitely a little more batshit crazy than this one is.
Yeah, this one, they're kind of equally disjointed. I'd say that's it, but there's just such a relish in the first one on the disjointedness of it, like the cuts between scenes in particular. This one they just it didn't feel like your car had just hit a brick wall going 50 miles an hour, and all of a sudden it just boom. Okay, we're done with that, and then the subsequent cut was almost inevitably totally disconnected, had absolutely nothing to do with the things that had happened before. It's just like, off and doing something else. So there were things about that one. I think, well, so you, you had made your promise that, because you're the big guy and, Mr. Perfect, and I won't pick on child actors and la 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 and all that stuff. But and I, as I mentioned, I really, didn't think that our Lord and Savior had any major issues in this movie. I was fine with him. He did a good job. But before we leave, I do want to take a shot at a child actor before we leave. Coma Boy. So, the guy had one job, be in a coma for almost the whole movie. That's it. That's all he had to do. I was not buying the coma at all.
No.
Not buying the coma at all. I'll give him that. It's probably hard to having, if you've never been in a coma, it might be hard for you to know what's my
motive. The proper emotion.
Yeah. What's my coma motivation? How do I do this? I get that. But then he comes out of the coma. And I will say they probably picked the perfect actor to play someone who is just coming out of a coma and really did not have any faculties about themselves, because he kind of blobbed out a line or two, and it was done. The end of the movie, time to watch some more wrestling clips again. But he I didn't buy his coma, and him coming out of the coma, I guess, was possibly screen accurate. It might have, maybe that's the way someone would be, but for movie purposes, he needed to give us give us a little more than he did. But because he also looked like he had been napping too, and it just kind of woke him up, which he might have been because he's just laying there with his eyes closed for most of the show. So
Yeah, I assume between shots he was probably dozing off.
yeah, I think he was maybe method, and they said, "No, you're in a coma. You are laying in this bed the entirety of us filming this movie."
Now, I do have to ask you, Kelly. So we've seen the first two of these movies. If they go and continue this on with this kind of semi-anthology style to it, what sport are they tackling next for A Christmas Miracle?
So a roller derby Christmas miracle could be one. Um, you have any ideas?
So I was going to say a boxing Christmas Miracle, and he fights Jake Paul.
I'm for that.
Something
I
happens to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's like in a coma or whatever it is, and the only way to save him,
like he
God
was.
comes.
You
Yeah,
know?
God comes, makes him another deal. Do this by Christmas, I'll save this person. It's to beat up Jake Paul and avenge Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I could I could see that. I could see that. And then Miss Kitty Cat would be like maybe Jake Paul's girlfriend. I think this
Yeah,
would be
I can see it.
be a thing. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, a boxing Christmas miracle would be good. Um, and then it can be Jake will be getting kind of beat up and by the little kid, and like his eye will have swollen up, and he'll be back into going, cut me, Dick, whatever his brother's name is, but cut me, and so he'll cut him, and then Jesus will come over and heal it, and so it'll be good, it'll be a good thing. So. And then just to clarify for folks who are there, when Mike and I are referring to Jesus and God throughout this movie, we were referring to Ken Delvecchio as God and Mario Delvecchio as Jesus. And we were just thinking they perhaps were serving as proxies for those individuals. And we weren't trying to do anything more than that. Well, I wasn't. Mike might have been.
Hey, what did I do?
That's right. Not at all. So I don't think you could have gotten any more holiday cheer than what we've just given you.
That's it.
Fair warning to not watch this movie. You're welcome. Our gift to you. But it's, don't listen to the Lion IMDb. It's only an hour and 15 minutes, and most of that's trailer credit. It's wrestling footage anyway. So
if you're skipping the credits, this movie is under an hour.
Yeah, you'll be done quick. So check it out. Please consider subscribing if we haven't offended you much throughout this whole thing. Subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when notifications come out. You can also check out Hard No, the World's Shortest Podcast, published daily. It's a daily conversation with Mike and I where we don't include you, but you can listen to us. So that's a thing. And then there's merchandise.
Pretend like you're there with us.
Yeah, it's like you're there with us and we're ignoring you and having a conversation. What could be more fun than that?
That's accurate.
So that's we could probably need to work on working that into the description of the show.
We need to get Kenny D on Hard No.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. All right. Well, happy holidays, everybody, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.